Welcome, my friends. I'm Alex Jones, your host. This is another edition of InfoWars Nightly News. It is the evening of December 29th, 2011 on this Thursday edition. And, of course, we'll be back tomorrow night as we are every weeknight. We've got some particularly important investigative reports we're going to be airing tomorrow evening dealing with terrorism, death statistics versus things like champagne corks. Did you know that champagne corks kill more people than terrorists every year? It's coming up tomorrow, but tonight is a jam-packed transmission. Before I get into the news, we've got John Trudell, Native American activist, philosopher, actor, researcher. We're going to be looking at the anniversary of the 1890 massacre at Wounded Knee, and we'll also discuss the nature of reality coming up with John Trudell this evening. We're also going to be looking in just a moment at cancer viruses in the vaccines and more, because Hugo Chavez is in the news saying that Fidel Castro warned him about the U.S. government trying to give him cancer. And Chavez says he doesn't know if it's true. Fidel just warned him. I don't like Fidel Castro or Hugo Chavez. Let's get that straight. I like communist about as much as I like bubonic plague. The fact is we have U.S. government documents. They do it, and they do it to the American people. Not the U.S. government, though. A tiny group of eugenicists in control of DARPA and science research in this country. That's coming up. Stay with us. But first, let's go ahead and launch into today's top stories. Well, Ron Paul, in most polls, is still the leader in the key kickoff state for the Republican primary of Iowa. But the system is pulling out all the stops to make up stuff, demonize him. We're going to be breaking some of that down in a moment. But there was a big defection. Michelle Bachmann's chair of her campaign has defected to Ron Paul today. So a big win. Ron Paul has also been endorsed by the latest winner of American Idol. Not too important for me, but in this pop culture, it's big news. And Jesse Ventura, the former Minnesota governor, movie star, of course, and host of the show Conspiracy Theory on True TV, endorsed Ron Paul for president today on my syndicated radio broadcast. Continuing here, here's the Daily Beast, a subsidiary of Newsweek magazine. Michael Medved, a neocon rhino there to control real conservatives in this country, came out and demonized Ron Paul for coming on my radio show and talking about world government. And he went on to basically imply that it is crazy for Ron Paul to come on my show. And he also then, out of context with no link, said that I've accused George Bush and the New World Order of planning the extinction of the human race. That's not what I said. I said that there is a population reduction program on record injecting children with syphilis in Latin America, Africa, and the U.S., as well as Asia. There's been programs of forcibly sterilizing women from India to Peru. And that's what he boils all of that down to, and Ron Paul being in my film Endgame that breaks all of this down. You're a film reviewer, Medved. Get it straight. Another ridiculous attack, and the New York Times attacked Ron Paul for being a long-time guest of my radio show. And again, they built more straw men. They didn't actually attack Ron Paul on any of the issues. They said that Ron Paul's crazy because he believes there's a global government being formed, despite the fact that it's admitted that a global private corporate government is being formed. They made jokes about elitist cabals. We've paid tens of trillions of dollars to these foreign offshore IMF, World Bank connected groups. Of course it exists. They went on to say Paul has frequently attacked the alleged New World Order that we have all these presidents calling for, elitist cabals like the Trilateral Commission and the Rockefeller family. David Rockefeller, in fact, I meant to show this tonight. We'll show it tomorrow night. My brain remind me to do that. He came out, remember this is teleprompter free news, in his memoir, 5 years ago. In fact, during the break, we might be able to actually pull that up, and said, I've been accused, and my family's been accused of wanting to end U.S. sovereignty and set up a world government. Well, I've been accused, and I say guilty as charged. In fact, guys, pull up David Rockefeller's memoir, Admitting Plan to End U.S. Sovereignty. You'll find it. It's paid $446, I think, going from memory. I mean, it's right there. In fact, we actually have it on the bookshelf out there. I meant to show that, but here they are treating their listeners, their readers, their viewers like they're idiots. CBS News, New York Times, you name it. Oh my God, he goes on Alex Jones's show and they talk about the mega global rich trying to take over the planet. So he goes on, in conjunction with globalist organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank, wish to foist on Americans. In 2006 column published on the website Lou Rockwell, and it goes on to show him breaking that down. They continue to demonize yours truly. It says, Paul knows where his bread is buttered. He regularly appears on the radio program of Alex Jones, a vocal 9/11 and New World Order conspiracy theorist. You cover real news, you're a conspiracy theorist, because these guys supposedly control reality. In his home state of Texas, on Jones' show earlier this month, Paul alleged that the Iranian plot to kill the Saudi ambassador on United States soil was a propaganda stunt perpetuated by Obama administration. Hundreds of experts came out, even on Fox News, CNN, including Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer and FBI agents, and said it was staged and fake. But they condense it down like we're all basically crazy. So the system is definitely getting desperate. Oh, we do have the quote here. Let's turn to it right here. Let's turn to it right here on the TV screen. This is from his memoir. Now, the site they found just gives a quote. I think his book's called Reflections. I read it, but I'm going from memory. In fact, after we're done with this, pull me up the, this is live teleprompter free here, okay? Well, we're actually taping the show tonight, but the point is it's live. I'm in here recording this live. We're flying by the seat of our pants. For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents such as my encounter with Castro to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalist and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. And that's nothing in his book. He admits the Bilderberg Group sets policy. He admits he wants a one world government. Guys, just type in David Rockefeller autobiography, and that will give you, oh, it's called Memoirs. That's right. It's called Memoirs. There's another one about the Rockefellers called the other name. Yeah, it's David Rockefeller Memoirs. In fact, even to show folks the cover, it's him on a sideways shot, a black and white photo. I'll show it to you here in a minute coming up. There it is. Boom, sideways shot. I actually have that on the bookshelf out there in my office. There he is. There he is saying it right there. Ladies and gentlemen, teleprompter free. We don't operate with teleprompters. We cover real news. Now, let's continue looking at the Rockefeller family and some of the things these scallywags are up to. This is out of Reuters, posted on Yahoo's front page today. Venezuela's Chavez, did U.S. give Latin American leaders cancer? And he goes on to say, well, he's heard it from people. He doesn't know if it's true, but now that other Latin American leaders who aren't that old, like Cristina Fernandez, are joining the long list of presidents in Latin America diagnosed with cancer who don't play ball. He said it would not be strange if they had developed the technology to induce cancer and nobody knew about it until now. I don't know. I'm just reflecting, he said in a televised speech to troops at a military base. Fidel always told me, Chavez, take care. These people have developed technology. You are very careless. Take care what you eat, what they give you to eat, a little needle, and they inject you with I don't know what, he said. Okay, so this is what I've always talked about. It turns into rumors. The Gulf of Tonkin to get us into Vietnam was not a rumor. The officers on the ships came back, told the San Diego Herald Tribune, we've shown you copies, that the ships weren't attacked, it was staged. It was a conspiracy theory for 40 years when people talked about it, until they declassified in 2004 that indeed our government made up the attacks on our ships to launch the Vietnam War officially. It was never a rumor. So see, he's lazy, like a communist would be, and no doubt, pal, you probably were given cancer. This is part of a strategic program. I have all the documents right here. But you're too lazy when Fidel Castro tells you what's going on because it's declassified there was a U.S. program to try to give him cancer, but they couldn't get it in his food. Okay? So he tells you all this, and then what do? You just say, oh, Fidel told me, but I don't have any proof because you're lazy. And this is the problem with people. They don't go to the original source documents. They just shoot their mouths off. But no doubt, the globalists or this mega banking cartel sucking America dry, they don't like little criminals like Chavez taking control of some of their goodies down there. And so I don't have proof that this is happening to him, but I know it exists. So since I saw this morning, I had the crew do a little bit of research and pull what we had in our archives up for you. First exhibit is this excellent book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, by Edward T. Haslam, who I do want to get on, forward by great researcher Jim Marrs. This is put out by Trine Day, a very respectable group with a lot of courage on the vanguard of getting information out. And you can pull up these documents separately online. This is from the Library of Congress, National Archives. Separate documents have leaked similar to this. But this is from Jim Garrison, the DA in New Orleans, separately in his JFK investigation, came across in the files of people he'd raided and things over the years that Lee Harvey Oswald and others who were CIA were working with the National Archives and being given samples of cultured cancers that they were injecting into rats and hamsters that were killing them. And we'll roll through some of the shots of the bibliography of this book, but melanoma, leukemia, they talk about how if you can inject this into somebody, they're deader than a hammer. They call it the 24-hour cancer. And this is the type of stuff that goes on. So this is all covered in this book by Trine Day. We don't carry the book. I should actually call them up and carry this, as I read this a couple years ago. But we'll definitely get Edward T. Haslam on the show to break this down. But you can see Jim Garrison actually entered these into the court record, and you can see him there in the memo, and then it goes through all of these. Now, it isn't just Latin American leaders who don't play ball that get cancer sprayed in their face virally. And by the way, that's what's admitted in these documents, is what's been known since the 20s. The Rockefellers discovered this through their Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Germany and other institutions. Estrogen hormones is the genesis of cancer. That's in the bibliography right there. I put a star by it. And what they do is they inject you with, most cancer is viral. They inject you with viruses that are designed to not trigger until your hormone levels go down at around age 60, so they don't have to pay for your retirement through the Social Security system. That's how the big banks steal it. They just, through polio shots and other vaccines, they give you these cancer viruses, and all major vaccines variants have been found to have these. Even though it's not part of the manufacturing process, they're adding them to it. And that's all done to get rid of you. Now, don't believe me. Give me a document cam shot here. Here's the San Francisco Chronicle, and this is 2001. Rogue viruses, they weren't rogue, in vaccine, early polio vaccine harbored virus, now feared to cause cancer in humans. And they estimate over 100 million Americans contracted and died from the 50s to the 70s from cancers in viruses injected into them through the polio shots and oral. And by the way, it came out CBS News 2 years ago. They've been giving kids oral polio again, giving them cancer, and giving them polio. In fact, guys, people won't believe that. Let's just do this right now. And again, I haven't have a studio audience tonight. I'm just thinking of this on my feet because I've done so much research. Guys, Google for folks. Everybody can do this watching at home. Google polio vaccine gave children polio. And you'll get CBS News, ABC News 2 years ago, and then 5 years ago, and then 8 years ago, and 10 years ago. It's always an accident. You know, they said, oh, the Africans run when the UN trucks pull up because they say the vaccines are killing them. They are. They've caught the UN adding sterilant to the vaccines. There it is. WebMD, polio vaccine. And it well, that's in 1955. No. This is polio vaccine with cancer. I'm saying type in polio vaccine caused polio. And I'm talking from 2 years ago. It was in Pakistan and other countries. They caught them all over the world, giving kids live polio and actually killing them with real weaponized polio. There it is. CBS News. Mutant polio virus spreads in Nigeria. AP, polio, the dreaded paralyzing disease stamped out in the industrialized world, is spreading in Nigeria. And health officials say in some cases it's caused by the vaccine used to fight it, even when they get caught. See, the problem is I got too much proof. It's like that Gnarls Barkley song. We ought to play that sometime. You know, I'm crazy. Not because I don't know anything, but because I knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly. All right, let's continue here. Here's New York Times. Study is unsure on tainted polio vaccine cancer role. The government's own reports in the 70s say hundreds of millions got it, 100 million contracted cancers, and many of them didn't survive it. Look at that whitewash out of the New York Times. Let's continue here with some of these articles. There's the Times of London. Smallpox vaccine triggered AIDS virus. AIDS epidemic triggered by smallpox vaccine. Times of London. In fact, you can actually document cam and zoom in right here on the actual scan of the Times of London right there for everybody. Oh, yeah, it came out under a Navy study. They shot up gay people in New York with it to then, because they knew they were having hundreds of sexual partners, they would spread it, a great vector. Very cold-blooded. You know, like fleas would be a vector for bubonic plague. Well, they just use promiscuous people as the vector for this. Here's another one. 12 million of Americans received contaminated polio vaccine between 55 and 63. And again, I did this short order today. I couldn't find the one where they said that 100 plus million. This is just some article that only breaks down a little bit of it. 12 million Americans received it. It's much higher than that. Merck admits injecting cancer viruses, SV40 and others into millions. There's another big report on that. Simian virus 40, which again creates just hundreds of deadly, formerly rare cancers. Cancer's up over 2,000%. The U.S. has the highest rate of breast cancer. So that is some of the news on that front tonight. So there you go, Chavez. Instead of mumbling with Fidel Castro, because I'll say this. Again, I don't want anybody to be killed by this stuff. And I was unsure about Chavez 5, 6, 7 years ago when he was killing the North American, South American free trade deals. And I'm for Venezuela and other countries having sovereignty, but I don't like the seizure of businesses, what you've set up. It's just another form of tyranny. But did the U.S. give you cancer? No. If someone gave you cancer, it's the military-industrial complex New World Order that is trying to dominate all of our countries, but not the U.S. itself. The criminals running our country are not the U.S. Okay, let's continue on to the next issue. When radiation levels spiked massively from Fukushima 9 months ago, the fastest sea corridors bringing the radiation to North America within a month and a half had hit Alaska. And we had reports then of radiation levels going off the charts. What did the EPA do? Federal government? They just raised the level of what they said was safe. They said, you know what, this isotope's gone up, we'll just raise the level of what we say safe. Well, now seals with damaged flippers and hair loss are being killed by radiation from Fukushima plant, biologists warn. And they've done the test, the radiation level has gone up. Now, they first thought it was a virus, but they're not testing positive. That same wreckage of all the tsunamied cities and towns, that got carried out to sea. Water traveled in some cases in a month and a half to the coast of the U.S. and Canada and Alaska. The wreckage started hitting 3 weeks ago, and it's highly radioactive. All those houses, all those reactor parts, that's hitting the West Coast. Kids are dropping dead all over Japan, heart failure from the radiation. And our government's response, the Japanese government's response, is everything's fine. In '86, with Chernobyl in the Ukraine, the Russians said, don't drink milk, don't eat surface food for 6 months, we got to ship it in. All of Europe refused to eat the food. They shipped it in from America and other areas. For much lower radiation, this time they're saying, just go ahead and take it, everything is fine, it's going to be good for you. So there it is. Seals with damaged flippers and hair loss are being killed by radiation from Fukushima plant, biologists warn. Continuing here with more news. U.S. sends aircraft carrier through the Strait of Hormuz during Iran war games. Government debated provoking war by creating false flag attack at sea. And it breaks down previous reports in the New Yorker magazine and others that there was a plan to try to get Iran stirred up into being involved in some type of conflict. Incredible escalation there. Another Kurt Nimmo article, bailing out European banks, Bernanke and Fed deceive Congress. And we go over how they're basically urinating away our tax money. Bernanke told senators that the cartel had no intention of bailing out European banks. He told the lawmakers that repeatedly. We have links to it. Now we learn the Fed is indeed in the business of bailing out European banks. It is secretly using a temporary U.S. dollar liquidity swap arrangement with the ECB and central banks of Canada, England, Switzerland, and Japan. Finally tonight, the SOPA would destroy jobs, the economy, so why are unions supporting it? You've had the 80 inventors of the internet coming out 2 weeks ago saying it's an internet takeover. You've had huge boycotts taking place against GoDaddy. You've had the admission that it ends due process and allows selective kill switches. And the unions who supported NAFTA and GATT because their leadership's been bought off, that destroyed their jobs, are now doing this. They take your union funds and then they use it for the globalist. I'm not even against the idea of unions. I'm for people getting together and organizing. But the unions have been turned into vessels of the New World Order, and the system does not want you knowing that. Okay, we are going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to our guest about Wounded Knee that happened in 1890. Today is the anniversary, and a lot more. And we have a special broadcast tomorrow. But if you want to research more about the cancer viruses and the vaccines, we have a new report out at Infowars.com breaking this down, and the bisphenol A, and how this is a soft kill, slow kill, holocaust, where the government, by design, and major corporations are involved in poisoning you and your family. Sorry this information's so hardcore, but truth is stranger than fiction, and it's my job to tell the truth, no matter how out of control it is. I want to thank all of you that are subscribers to PrisonPlanet.tv. Don't forget we have a 15-day free trial running again because it's been so popular. If you're watching this later on the web, thank those that do subscribe because they financed your ability to see this information. So please spread this info on. That's the bare minimum folks can do. The power of the people virally spreading information is unstoppable. We'll be right back. It's InfoWars Nightly News.
It was between 1972 and 73, but it was still a lot of prejudice around this area. My wife was sick and I was trying to get some attention for her. Nobody came to check. They just left her there. Well, I believe I was left there because of the difference, me being black and her being white, and every time I would say something to the head nurse, she would get pretty upset. And then she finally called the Freeport Police Department, said I was harassing her. And I mean, I didn't know anything to do. Well, then Ron Paul come to my rescue. He just stepped in and went to work with my wife. And after he seen her, I'd say no more than 10 minutes later, she had a stillborn boy child. And he said as far as the bill, he would take care of everything, which he did. I never got a bill from the hospital or anything. And he was a doctor of medicine, and that's what he was doing, was practicing medicine, and it didn't matter who and what and why. He was doing it because he think of one human being just as much as another one. He's just an honest man, and that's something we need now in this day and time. It's a lot of politics and no honesty. When you have honesty, well, people will try to do anything to blot you out, and that's what they will try to do to him, is blot him out, because he will be honest, and they need more like him.
Click here to donate to help get James' story broadcast on television.
We are back. It's InfoWars Nightly News, and today, December 29th, 2011, is the anniversary of the December 29th, 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre. And of course, studying just basic history, the British concentration camp model, the Nazi concentration camp model, the Soviet Gulag model was based on the reservation model that was developed in this country by the British early on, and then once this country became the United States, it was expanded, and that's what different colonial powers have done throughout history. They always dehumanize a group before they kill them. or before they enslave them or cut off their resources. You've seen that with Arabs, Muslims, Persians. The mainstream media, it's acceptable to call them racial slings and terms, but nobody else, because that's the current group they want to wage war on. But also in the internal Homeland Security documents that we've gotten over the years, it's all about landowners and independent groups now, liberal, conservative, constitutionalist, anybody who wants to be left alone. Amish. These groups are all being targeted now because, as Russell Means pointed out 6 months ago or so in that special report we put out, welcome to the reservation. This model, this global gulag model, is what we're facing. And he's really an expert on Native American activist issues and one of the best known people out there. He's an author, poet, actor, musician, John Trudell, and he joins us on the anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre to break it down in context of what's happening today. And also on screen, we'll have his website for you if you want to learn more about this complex individual. John, thanks for coming on with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I mean, you heard my introduction, but where should we start with what's happening in the world today and tying it back to what happened at Wounded Knee?
Well, I think Wounded Knee is being replayed in the world today. It's just being replayed. The behavioral energy pattern of I call them the industrial ruling class. I think it's beyond capitalism and socialism and communism. To me, it's an industrial ruling class, and all these isms serve the needs of this industrial ruling class. And I think that the behavior pattern of this, historically speaking, of this industrial ruling class never really changes. What changes is the technology, the terminology, and the generations. So for the Wounded Knee Massacre, I think that forms of that massacre are taking place now today, but it's now the American citizenry, and the forms of the massacre now are more like psychological. I mean, this whole thing with the economic manipulation and the authoritarian emergence of the Patriot Act and all of these various mechanisms, controlling mechanisms, I think that they're psychologically massacring the American citizens mentally.
I agree with you. I mean, now the Bluecoats aren't coming after the Apache. They're coming after everybody with the NDAA, all these admissions that its citizens will disappear into nowhere. I mean, this military-industrial complex is a predatory, cannibalistic system.
There's an industrial ruling class. The military-industrial complex, is a terminology that has emerged within our generation. But this military-industrial complex serves the industrial ruling class. The industrial ruling class is basically probably that 1% to 2% that control all the resources, and they, they basically remain hidden behind all of these other labels, whether it's the industrial ruling class or it's capitalism or communism or any of these things. And their plan, I mean, is to consume. It's like, in a way, because everything is about energy. Everything is about energy. And everything that goes on in this dimensional reality is about energy. And what this industrial ruling class is they're consuming the energy of the human beings. And they turn the human beings into citizens through their mining processes of their educational systems, their religious systems, their patriotic systems, their military systems, their economic systems. To me, these are all mining mechanisms, mine the energy of the human being. And so what I see going on now is, it's like the Dark Ages. If you go and look at medieval Europe, back in the Dark Ages, the energy pattern, the behavior pattern is the same now as it was then. It's just that the technology and the terminology. So however we're going to deal with this, we need to really start, I think, using our creative intelligence to see what's really going on beyond the emotional fears and paranoid perceptions of reality that they've imprinted us with.
Well, John, a few months ago, I was somewhat aware of your work, but one of my producers wanted to get you on, and I said, well, give me time because I want to be able to research and really find out what he's into. And now that I've looked at what you do more, I mean, I admire a lot of it because that's what you're doing is you're trying to shift paradigms away from all the terms that they give us, the maps of the mind that they make, to look at it from a fresh perspective. Because for my own research, that's the only way to ever break free from this is that the system has created all these different variants that it still controls, and that's why it's so hard to get out of it. And when you read the top globalist ruling class documents, you know, they say the same thing you say, but in different words. They want to return us to the Dark Ages, to feudalism. They use poverty as a tool of control. People say, oh, the politicians are idiots. They can't fix it. They don't want to fix it. They're just front men for people who want to control us and want to, as you said, totally steal our psyches and turn us into some type of zombies, basically.
Well, you know, everything that ever happens, it has to manifest through our intelligence, our perception of reality, our creative mind. And what this industrial ruling class, industrial civilization thing seems to do is it imprints, you know, from as soon as we're born, we start getting imprinted with their perception of reality. And their perception of reality is basically a fear-based perception. You know, we're guilty for being born, sin, blame, all that stuff. You know, and so that we're imprinted to believe from the beginning that there's something wrong with us. And this imprinting, as we go through our lives, this imprinting just continues to manifest. It's as basic as, you know, the original sin. So there's something wrong with us. Or all of the advertising and commercials that go on, they're basically psychologically telling us we're not good enough. The whole thing is an issue or something with us. So we don't trust ourselves. And this is kind of like them taking the being part of human and turning it into an energy that they can consume and use it to run their system. So we're programmed to perceive reality based upon believing. We're not taught to perceive reality from the view of thinking. And then and everything's about energy. So we can either think or we can believe, but we can't do both at the same time. It's one or the other. Because thinking represents energy flowing. It's flowing into the infinite, so it's evolving. Believing represents energy taken and put this energy into a container. The energy of thinking put into a container, because all beliefs are prejudiced and biased. They're limited. They're not objective. That when we take the energy of thinking and we put it in a container of I believe this, I believe that, that means I'm not thinking. It means, because once I believe, I don't have to think anymore because it's just there automatic. So we're programmed to believe what we're programmed to believe. And the most basic part of that programming of to believe has got to do is that there's something wrong with us. See, and once we believe that, now they got us. See, they can manipulate anything. And so once we're programmed to believe that there's something wrong with us as human beings, as individuals, then after that, they plant the emotional buttons based upon those fears of something's wrong with us. And then every time they want to control us, they push an emotional button. And then our thinking, our creative intelligence goes off into this chaos. And it's generally, we've been wired in such a way to use the power of our creative intelligence against ourselves through these beliefs that are based upon fears of self and self-worth.
All right, expanding on that, there is a crisis in the social engineers themselves that I've been noticing develop and intensify. They know that they're losing control at many levels, and the same systems they've used to dumb down the population are now basically backwashing or blowing back on them. And I see all these moves for oppression of free speech, militarization, trying to start new wars as desperate thrashing. I mean, do you concur with that, or do you disagree, or what can you add? Because everybody I talk to seems to come to the same conclusion, or at least similar, that we're coming towards a quickening, a crisis, and for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. That the world and humanity is in an extreme crossroads right now.
I think that maybe they do have it under control, because, you know, the way this energy mining process, because it's all about energy, and the way this whole energy mining process goes is what it's, to me, it's like they anticipate, they know that there's going to be public rebellion. This is out of desperation, there'll be public rebellion. But I think where they feel that they have it under control is everybody's been imprinted by the same belief systems. See, no one's really thinking outside of it. Because, see, the protest is energy. It's a system designed to absorb energy. So if we protest, it absorbs the energy of that protest. whether we do it violently or non-violently, it absorbs the energy of that protest. Because the 60s shows me as an example, our generation, we were out there and we did it all. We fed our energy to them, but somehow they absorbed it. And the situation changed, all right, by getting worse. It didn't get better. The war is they're more lethal, they're more deadly, they're internment camp, this whole stuff, this police state thing that they're setting up, all right? So somehow, to me, even when when it appeared to us we were out of control, they controlled us. They absorbed the energy. And the closest I can come to it is because, see, we're reacting to how they programmed us to believe. We're not really clearly thinking on our own. And you know, it's about energy. Something I'd like to say, you know, because if we go out and violently protest or non-violently protest, it appears to me they absorb that energy. So maybe it's really an issue, how do we confront this situation without allowing it to absorb our energy?
Okay, I want to hear then your ideas of how to respond to them, but I agree with what you're saying. It's a very sophisticated issue, but to try to boil it down, they know that there's going to be an awakening to the corruption in sectors of Wall Street. So they have George Soros, who controls the left wing of the control paradigm, and the Democratic Party come out on record and announce, come out and demonstrate against corruption. They make it very general, real people show up, then they take control of it to play the part of controlled left so the controlled right can then attack it, and so they can then demonize the groups. It turned out Homeland Security ran it nationwide. They had the prisoners released from jail and mentally ill and others to send them down to the demonstrations to then say, oh, look, they're a bunch of, you know, crazy people, to then demonize everybody. It was all scientifically done. And then they used that as a pretext to then try to basically brand all opposition one way. And they did get power and energy out of it. So when you're dealing with something that sophisticated, who knows how to take control of things, how to misbrand them, how to label them, how to, you know, do all of this, how do you counter something like that that's scientifically already thought 10 steps ahead because it is so cold-blooded and doesn't have any basic love or humanity?
I think we think differently. We think more, we believe less. We think more, we believe less. I think this is crucial. You know, the power that we have as human beings, all right? I mean, the power of our creative intelligence. I'll use this as an example. Have you not used you, a general genetic you, general you, but have you ever had a situation where you felt powerless? And during that experience of feeling powerless, how bad can you make yourself feel based around your fears and your doubts and insecurities? And then how does this affect the people that we interact with? See, this is power. This is our power. This is the power of our creative intelligence. It's just how we've been imprinted to use it. Now imagine if we had taken the power of our creative intelligence and used it more clearly and coherently, and not fear-based, but clearly and coherently. This is the kind of power. This is the power of the people that they're afraid of. They're not afraid of a demonstration. They're not afraid of military revolution. They're not afraid of any of that because the system is designed to absorb the energy of that kind of rebellion. Because in order to win the revolution, you have to be badder than the bad guys, so you become the new bad guys, and this all serves the industrial ruling class's larger interest. The power that they're afraid of is a clear, coherent, thinking human being. This is what they're afraid of. All right? And so to me, when we use our energy against ourselves, our creative intelligence, then they absorb that energy. We're feeding it to them.
Let me expand on something. Let me expand and ask you another question, get your perspective on it. I noticed that they're worried about anybody who wants to live in the countryside and be self-sufficient. Obviously, they want us dependent, but now they're really moving against rural communities, against Amish, against same thing they did with the Native Americans. I mean, we're really seeing them move into this phase right now. The system is very threatened by people, as you said, that control their own energy.
Yeah, well, you know, when we look at it, see, let's look at human beings, the energy of human beings, like the energy of fossil fuels. or the energy of uranium, or the energy of trees or plants. Energy, all right? We should think about, what our fears are. Like every fear that we have as a human being, the ones that we hide, that nobody gets to see. Well, when we look at these fears, that we believe about ourselves, if we really think about it, see, we didn't think that up. Somebody put it in there for us to believe, and they put it in there repeatedly until we started to believe it. See, so when we start to recognize that there's nothing wrong with us, we're not feeding them our energy. When we start to make clear and coherent decisions, we're not feeding them our energy. When we just don't emotionally react every time they push an emotional button, we're not feeding them our energy. Because this is the energy that it takes, and the energy it takes to run their machine. So when we start to re-recognize ourselves as human beings and the power of our creative intelligence, because, reality is this, is if tomorrow morning, everyone woke up and said, all right, I will no longer enable the lie. I will no longer believe the lie. If everyone got up tomorrow and said that, the whole energy paradigm, everything would shift, because that's how that would collapse it. But obviously that's not going to happen. But see, so we prop it up by the negative beliefs we have about ourselves. And I think that these things really need to be addressed. Because, if we're going to make a better change in the long run in life, the energy we take into that change, it says what kind of change we will have. As an example, in the 60s, we took emotional energy, idealistic emotional energy, into rebelling against the system. All right. But see, here we are 40, 50 years later, and what we did was the solution that we brought in our rebellion just created the chaos. It continued the chaos. But I mean, however we're going to approach it now, I think we need to think in terms of let's go into this clearly and coherently. Let's recognize what we're dealing with. Let's not just emotionally react.
Well, John, I agree with you in the respect that world government's been admitted. It's being set up publicly by the big mega banks. They have an anti-human eugenics population reduction agenda. And then they separately have pundits saying world government doesn't exist and we're crazy to talk about it. And then people say, I choose not to believe this is happening, like they can just believe something. It's delusional. It's magical thinking, and that will make it the case. Now, I agree with you that the global engineers, the technocrats who study human development, sociology, anthropology, psychology, they do have plans for this awakening. But what I'm saying is people are more and more getting outside the box and seeing the very manipulation itself. So I think there's a real struggle going on right now. From my research, I don't think the ruling class has got this thing in the can yet. I think we're in the fight.
No, they don't have it in the can yet. I agree with that. They don't have it in the can yet. But the deal is, you see, they've dealt with, as long as they've been in existence, from the Romans on, they've dealt with rebellion from the oppressed mass. And then the new empire replaces it. See, so this is why I'm saying on what it is. No, I don't think that they have it in the can. No, I don't. But I think that but from their view of it, we're not necessarily out of control yet. Just because we're upset and we're rebelling and we're going through taking these different emotional positions, to me, that isn't enough. It's the coherency of thinking.
Well, it's basically like a tropism, even with the ruling class themselves. It's like a Groundhog Day, but now it's not the Romans or the Babylonians or the Aztecs. Now it's nuclear weapons, nanotech, and if they don't change the system, they're probably going to end up destroying all of us.
Yes, that's a very realistic possibility. Yes, it is.
Well, I tell you, John, really interesting talking to you. I want to spend just a few minutes here about remembering what happened at Wounded Knee, because this is the anniversary. It's another example of how types of genocide and Holocaust, this is only one part of a larger Holocaust, can be carried out against any group, anytime. And these systems do basically gobble up populations. And I mean, as you said, on a wider scale, it's now happening just to our psyches and our humanity. But I mean, closing comments about remembering Wounded Knee.
Well, I think the Wounded Knee, mean, on one hand, America's looking at it as the final, the history books like the final chapter of the Indian Wars, so to speak. It was an outrageous, act of genocide, but it was consistent with the acts of genocide that had been committed, the 400 years prior to that as it was going on. So it was not an inconsistent act, and I think that that's of serious relevance. It was the last public act, but it wasn't inconsistent with the treatment of the Native people. And it was done because we think differently. This is what I'm going to say. Yeah. See, the Native people, yes, we have the land and they wanted the land and it's about the land, you see, but the real enemy to the industrial ruling class is those who think differently. See, and we think differently. We thought differently then. Our thinking was along the line, no, there's a spirit. We're responsible for how we participate in this life, supposed to take care of the earth. This is how we protect the future, and how we protect the past is by how we conduct our past, by how we conduct ourselves now, how we participate as human beings. It's not about ownership and possession. It's about sharing and taking care, and it's about respecting the earth, and it's about spirit, and it's about these. See, so this is the perceptual reality that we came from. This is how we knew and recognized reality. This is what was the threat. This is what was the threat. All right, because that industrial ruling class in its shape and form at that time, it exterminates the spiritual relationship to life, exterminate the spiritual perceptional reality. That's what it's been all about. And so that's what Wounded Knee was about. Now, pretty much basically in the contemporary society that we're in, the citizens are the new Indians. But what's interesting, see, but the citizens don't have a spiritual perception of reality. They have a religious perception of reality. So that's why it's going to be easier to push their emotional buttons, all right, and herd them into the corrals. Yeah, if the people don't start to think about the reality of the situation. And one of the things to remember about Wounded Knee 1890, all right, the American citizens are the new Indians. It's your, however we look at it, you're the ones occupying the land. The land's now ownership of the land's now being taken from you. Your children's futures are being taken from you. Your contemporary way to have an economic survival is being taken from you. Your access to health care is being taken away from you. Your liberty is being taken away from you. So you're the new Indians. And I think that you should pay attention to history.
And you're right. It's the mainline Christian churches that teach it's the end of the world, lay down, self-fulfilling prophecy. There's nothing that you can do. And it's used, like Hitler used Romans 13, to make people just lay down and take it, and they are scared of people being spiritual. They love it when you're part of their controlled establishment churches, 501c3, and they have the clergy response teams we discovered where they secretly have most of the preachers on government payroll, just like communist China or Russia. It is so incredibly creepy.
What I call the industrial ruling class. You see, communism, whether it was in Russia, China, capitalism, fascism, Nazism, all of these were global experiments to see which kind of system would best serve the industrial ruling class's purpose for its long-term rights. Capitalism persevered. But they used, like when they got out of the gulags and all the they used these other systems and they floated them for 60, 70 years or whatever, however long they floated them. And then they found that capitalism worked more effectively. But you see, but they used, like the Contra wars in South and Central America and the gulags and stuff, they used all of the knowledge they gleaned from these to figure out how they're going to set up their little future.
No, you're right. They actually say they've tested them. They call wars laboratories, and they're fusing it all. Well, your Skype's been a bit choppy today, but your message has been crystal clear. I hope folks go visit your website and learn more from your perspective. John, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. All right, folks, that is it for this edition of InfoWars Nightly News. JohnTrudell.com is where you can learn more about his view and perspective, which I think is certainly one that can help us understand more of what's happening to us. We've got to get outside the box. Great job to the crew. Lord willing, we'll see you back tomorrow, 7 o'clock Central here, for the last InfoWars Nightly News of 2011, the year that we kicked off the Nightly News. And we'll see you back, of course, on the radio as well tomorrow at 11 a.m. But that's John Trudell. We'll hopefully get him on the radio via phone line where the audio is even clearer here in the next few weeks. And again, great job to the crew. That's it for this edition of InfoWars Nightly News. We'll see you back here tomorrow.